PetPocketbook, when I first came up with the idea, was a decade ago. And Russell came about 5 years ago. So that was a long journey to, it was a chicken and the egg issue of you needed to have something there to prove to people that there's something here that's worth their time. If you don't already know someone who can do the job and who's already a friend in your network, right?
Welcome to the Wear, Wag, Repeat podcast. I'm Tori Mystic. As a dog mom lifestyle expert, blogger, and business owner, I love talking to other women in the pet industry and sharing their advice with you every week. Sit, stay, and listen to the latest episode. In this episode, I am talking to Diana Akelman, a pet tech entrepreneur who founded PetPocketbook. Her app helps pet sitters and dog walkers run their business so they can focus on what they're passionate about, caring for pets. I was interested to learn that Diana has been working on this business for 10 years, and the app is still invitation only. We talked about how important it is to stay persistent and never give up on your dreams. It can take years to find the right people to bring your vision to life, and then years beyond that to get feedback from customers to fine-tune your product into something that is functional, looks good, and helps people. I also enjoyed hearing Diana's story of going from dog mom to human mom and the challenges that came with that. She is passionate about bringing attention to the fact that we shouldn't be expected to swoop in and instantly become super moms or super bosses or super dog moms. This whole journey can be pretty scary. Diana points out that often the scariest part is the unknown. So she is a big believer in doing a lot of prep work. Listening to her story, I saw a lot of similarities between how she prepared to run a business to how she prepared to be a dog mom to her Siberian Husky, Remington, and how she prepared to become a mom to her daughter. You are going to enjoy getting to know Diana. She is so relatable and so easy to talk to. As we near the end of the year, I am excited to share that this podcast will be hitting 250 episodes at the end of December. I need your help to put together a best of episode. Please reach out and let me know about your favorite podcast interviews and moments. You can DM me on Instagram at Wear, Wag, Repeat, or if you're on my email list, just hit reply to any email. Diana Akelman is the founder of PetPocketbook, an all-in-one software platform that gives you everything you need to run your dog walking or pet sitting business. Her journey in pet tech began with her now 7-year-old Siberian Husky, Remington. In preparation for bringing a new puppy into the family, Diana met a lot of local pet professionals, and she was surprised to discover that in an era when there was an app for everything, most pet care businesses were still running their operations on pen and paper or Excel spreadsheets. So PetPocketbook was born. Now their team of 7, mostly based in the greater Boston area, serves dog walkers and pet sitters across the US, Canada, and Australia. In addition to Remington and PetPocketbook, Diana is now also mom to the sweetest little 15-month-old baby girl named Josie. And with the help of her pack, she is learning the ropes of balancing life in this new role. Hi, Diana.
Hi, Tori. Thanks for having me.
Yes, welcome to the podcast. You have a lot going on, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hands full all the time.
So I guess right now, as I'm talking to you, right next to you is your dog, Remington.
That's right.
So he's the inspiration, or he kind of sparked the inspiration for PetPocketbook. So if you wouldn't mind kind of going back in time and telling us how you came up with this idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I always knew that I wanted to start my own business one day. It actually goes back to growing up with a small family business. My parents actually immigrated to the US when I was maybe one. They started from scratch with absolutely nothing but the clothes on their backs, as the saying goes, right? And as far as back as I could remember, they were gone for work before I got up and often worked late into the night after I went to bed. And I watched as they did that day in and day out to build a computer hardware business that eventually put me through college. So I saw firsthand the blood, sweat, and tears that they put into their business. And I also saw just how rewarding that could be, right? And fast forward to PetPocketbook, this was, God, a decade ago at this point. I really feel old. My then fiance, now husband, and I were super excited about the possibility of, finally getting a dog together. And I'm a huge type A planner. So in advance of that, I spent a ton of time on research, looking for the right type of dog, right, for our family, given our lifestyle. But also to make sure that we were finding pet professionals who can actually help us with training, with keeping our pup well socialized and exercised. And in that research, I realized that nothing really existed to help us find the right pet care providers that we could afford and trust. And that was super surprising for me because I felt like there was an app to help us find and book anything, right? And pets are such an important part of our lives. And I was like, why wasn't there something for the pet care space? At the same time, I had just gotten into business school. And I was wrapping up my last year as a growth investor. So I was spending a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to do next. And a big part of my job as an investor was to build relationships with entrepreneurs who we might invest in one day. And after spending 3 years getting to know entrepreneurs from all walks of life, I was really inspired by their stories, by their gumption, by their courage, right, to put themselves on the line in order to make something that they believed in a reality. And I felt like if there was a real need to be addressed here, I thought maybe this was what I was meant to do. So it's like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Ratatouille, maybe you have, but Chef Cousteau had that motto, anyone can cook, right? And I was like, maybe I'd be the linguini of the story. So, I mean, I always grew up with dogs. I love dogs. I had 2 growing up. One was actually a stray that we rescued off the street, from neighborhood kids who were actually throwing rocks at her, but that's another story.
Oh.
And it was also an opportunity to support small business, which has special meaning for me, having seen my parents' struggles as small business owners themselves. So while I was in school, I did a ton more market research, industry reports, competitive analyses, mass surveys, networking, and of course, talking to as many business owners in the space as I could. And the more that I learned about the pet care community, the more I sort of fell in love with it. Most of the business owners I met came into this profession out of this shared passion for animals. And of course, we all need to make a living, but, nowhere else in the business world have I seen such a collaborative and supportive community where it wasn't uncommon that a business owner might refer a prospective client to someone else because they were like, oh, your pack is a better fit for the dog. And there was just such an openness to sharing knowledge, whether that's best practices for group walks or tips about hiring and retaining staff. And so the more that I learned, the more excited I became about building a platform that'll not only make the lives easier for pet professionals, but also to help these businesses really thrive. So ultimately, that's how I came to the conclusion that we needed to focus first on building software for pet care providers like dog walkers and pet sitters to help them streamline and automate as much as we can, right? The things that are painful about running a business, like the scheduling, logistics, and invoicing, so that they could actually focus on what they really love doing, which was caring for our pets. And sort of the rest was history from there.
I love it. Well, and you touch on so many things. I had to bite my tongue there because I was like, I love all of this. And I think that it is so collaborative. And I think that it's amazing because you are starting your own small business that is then supporting all these other small businesses. And I think in my observation that most pet care businesses are women. And a lot of times they're doing it by themselves or they have a small staff. And so being able to help that particular demographic, I think is just really wonderful. And
Absolutely.
I love that you're a woman-owned business, of course. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. But yeah, it's just fantastic. And I think that it's interesting because it's interesting that you saw this kind of like hole in the market, because there are definitely some apps that are like the consumer facing, how to find a dog walker, whatever, which not sure how trustworthy some of those are, but there aren't a lot of options on like the business end, how to run your business. And I think a lot of people in all areas of the pet industry get into it because they have this passion for the pets and for what they do, but they don't realize, oh, you have to like also be a marketing expert and a graphic designer and customer service, and you have to do everything. And it's a lot. So that's where your app kind of comes in to take off some of that weight.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So is Pet Pocketbook a place where dog owners can go to search for a care provider, or is it really just for the dog walkers and sitters to run their business?
I'll say not yet and leave it at that.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot with that, but I just was curious. So if someone has a pet business already, like let's just say they have a dog walking business and they're currently running that through like a series of text messages, emails, DMs, I don't know, smoke signals, however else their clients are communicating with them, right? It's like all over the place. Yeah. What is the process for them to onboard to something like Pet Pocketbook?
Well, I feel like different software solutions are different in the way that they approach onboarding a new company onto their platform. But for us, we really pride ourselves in taking a very personal approach to this. So we've added a personal touch into every step of our customer journey that starts from the sales demo itself to the actual onboarding process and the account setup. And then when you're actually set up with us, we also set up a billing overview for before your first set of invoices are actually about to go out, because we know everyone's nervous about that. So we want to be there for you. And of course, at the end of the trial, a feedback call as well to understand what's been working, what's not been working, so that we can continually work on improving our product. And the important thing for us is that at the end of the day, everybody runs their businesses differently. They come from a different set of tools. And, all these touch points are opportunities for us to really understand where people are coming from, what they're actually struggling with, and whether or how we can best help. And where there isn't a fit too, like we try to be upfront about that as much as possible, as early as possible as well. So we're not wasting anyone's time either. But I think the important part for us is being there every step of the way, even including importing someone's existing client data, which is always the most overwhelming, like daunting task to think about when transitioning a platform, right? And we'll handle that for our clients for free upfront as part of their process of getting started with a free trial.
Oh, that's really awesome. So as much as pet sitters and dog walkers have to kind of like do everything, it sounds like you also have to kind of like do everything. But you are lucky to have been able to grow your team. So now you have 7 people working with you. What was the first position that you hired? What did you think was like the first thing that you wanted to get help with?
Well, that's not a hard one, because it's a software business and I'm not a software engineer. So over the years, I've worn probably every possible hat you can imagine, except for that. So the very first thing was to find someone who I could work with, who I could rely on to really lead our team on the engineering side of things. And I'm so thankful to have Russell, who's our chief architect, who's been with us now since, maybe it's been 5 years now, since 2017, who's really led the effort from the hiring front on the engineering side of things, architecting our product and our platform on the back end.
And what are some of the challenges? Because I think with an app, a lot of us are like, oh, well, can the app do this? Can it do that? But like sometimes it's a lot more complicated to get it to do these things. So what have been some of the challenges, I guess, of creating an app like this?
Well, I'll tell you that first challenge is that first step of getting to Russell in the first place. We were talking about like thinking back, well, what was something that I wish that I had known,
right?
That I know now. And one of the biggest things initially when I was getting started that I was struggling with was, well, do I just start and go for it now? Or do I go do something else first to get a better sense of what I'm about to get myself into so that I know what to expect and what pitfalls to expect and can account for those? And the important part of that too, that I kind of missed a little bit, was the opportunity to network with other people in the community who could end up one day being on our team, right? And it was so hard. I mean, the PetPocketbook, when I first came up with the idea, was a decade ago. And Russell came about 5 years ago. So that was a long journey to, it was a chicken and the egg issue of you needed to have something there to prove to people that there's something here that's worth their time, if you don't already know someone who can do the job and who's already a friend in your network, right? And so that part of it was really tough. We had a lot of trial and error with contractors, contract developers. There were a lot of mistakes there, I will say. But again, I'm thankful to have ultimately found Russell, and that was a big step in terms of building our team, a big milestone for us.
Yeah, it seems like you just have to go through some kind of disasters in order to figure out what to even ask for sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so now you oversee the team. Are you managing the team
Yes.
that works for you? Okay. I'm sorry if I phrased that weirdly.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it that way, because we all serve our own respective functions, right? Everyone on the team has their own specialty, and there's a special part of the process that they own themselves. So as I talked about with Russell, he owns everything on the engineering side of things. And we have a lead mobile developer who owns everything in terms of our mobile app. We have Courtney, who focuses on the sales side of things, who focuses on our demos in that part of the process. And Patrick, who focuses on, once they've come through and decided to actually start a trial with us, like that entire journey for customer success and making sure that they're happy and getting what they need out of the platform. And of course, Nicole, who joined us most recently, right? Who's finally here to help us spread the word about PetPocketbook, because this is definitely something that we hadn't really been doing before. And, a lot of our past growth had primarily been based on word of mouth from our existing client base. So I'm super glad that she's here to help more people be able to discover us. And my function, aside from sort of overseeing a lot of these other places, is really on the finance side of things, as well as, most importantly, my favorite part of the job is on the product design side of things. From a design perspective, we're fortunate to have a lot of clients who are just as invested in our success as we are in theirs. So we get a lot of feedback, which is great. And we're so thankful for that. And this feedback typically, though, comes in the form of feature suggestions, as you were saying, and observations about what's working, what's not working. And the tough part is to then distill that information, digest it, and dig deeper to really understand the issue. So taking a step back from the suggestions around how we should be solving problems to first understanding the what. Like, what problem are we actually trying to solve? What is the end goal that we're trying to accomplish? And then maybe we can take a step back and be able to find a more elegant solution that could potentially solve multiple problems at the same time. Because at the end of the day, something that's really important to us, and that's really important to me from a product design standpoint, is that even as our app becomes more and more robust over time, we want it to continue to still feel simple and approachable and inviting the way that it currently feels, instead of overwhelming and complicated, as many people have often found with other software.
Yeah. Okay, so you are managing a lot of different elements and all these different people, and I think it's interesting to point out to people that you had this idea 10 years ago, and you've been working on it for 5+ years,
Yeah.
and then you're now just kind of putting together this bigger marketing plan to get the word out more. So things are not an overnight success. And I think back to like your story of your parents, and how long it took them to build up their business. So, there's no overnight success.
Absolutely. It's a lot of brute force, persistence, and hustling. I mean, I remember the early days of taking Remington with me. He's been there with me since the beginning, of going on trains and Ubers, and going in the T to like go meet clients from all across the greater Boston area, to actually sit down with them and have face-to-face conversations to understand, okay, what does your situation look like today? Let me show you what we have right now. Would this be helpful for you? If not, what should we be doing? And that has been our North Star, or our guiding star, throughout our entire journey as Pet Pocketbook has come to where it is today, which is to look to our clients to help us figure out what should be on our product roadmap, and how we should be prioritizing it. So
yeah. There's nothing more important than just talking face to face with your end users, basically.
Exactly. But you really have to find your support network to make this work, because it's hard. It's not all rainbows and unicorns and sunshine. There's a lot of challenges and struggles along the way, and I can't emphasize enough just the brute force persistence and hard work to make it happen.
Yeah, just never give up.
Mm-hmm.
What's it been like adjusting from dog mom life to human mom life?
Honestly, it's been a bit crazy. So my journey throughout all of this hadn't been super easy. First of all, one of the biggest things that when I look back on this journey on was initially just even the decision of having her in the first place. As a business owner, you're constantly thinking about, there's 5 million things, that you have to do. Right. And I always felt like there were more things that I could be doing, that I should be doing for the business. And how would I ever have the time? And I thought that maybe I'd have more time if we just reached the next milestone, and then next milestone, and the next milestone for the company. But there's always going to be another milestone. And, if you're like me, you're always going to feel guilty about that never ending list of things that still needs to get done. So, at the end of the day, we're just like, we always knew. We have been married for almost a decade now as well. And we always knew that we wanted to have kids, and we're like, let's just do it. Like, we can make it work. We're going to make it work. And it won't be easy. And it certainly hasn't been easy for us. But seeing Josie smile, hearing her laugh, and, feeling her little hands grab onto my arm when I carry her up to bed, like, all of that just makes it so worth it. And then once I was pregnant, then it was like, I don't know about anybody else, but I'll be the first to admit that I was absolutely petrified. I mean, you think about that as like, oh my God, this is so exciting. It's such a beautiful venture and journey to be on, which it all is. And that's not mutually exclusive, but it was,
right.
I was absolutely petrified.
It's all exciting, but I think it would be very scary.
It's very scary. And it's okay to admit that. But I feel like when you talk to other people, they're giving you the sunshine and unicorns and rainbows, version of the story. But it's okay, I think, to admit that it's really scary. Just the concept of delivery, right? Like, how does that physically happen? And I was like, my body is very uncomfortable. And then how does that happen? And then what is going to happen to my body afterwards?
Right.
The thought of that, it was just incredibly, incredibly scary. And then on top of that, once a human comes out, then you're responsible for another human. And I was just worried that, is there something that I could have possibly done that I didn't even realize that I did, that somehow messes her life, messes her up for the rest of her life, not to mention how overwhelming it was to just figure out all the things that we needed to get ready for the baby, because it's our first child and we had no idea what we needed, how much we needed of it, or, what are the things that we didn't know about that we should know about, but that we don't know about.
There's a lot of similarities listening to you talk about this to listening to you talking about launching the business. You were like, yes. Should I just dive in? Should I have a practice run? What should I do?
Exactly. Well, and not to mention at the end of it all too, Pet Pocketbook was technically my first baby. Remington was technically came in second, timing wise. Right.
Right.
And then, so with Josie, how do I balance my new role as a mom, right, with my obligations to my business? And I think the biggest thing that I learned through this process is that I wasn't alone. And, to all the soon to be moms out there, like, you're not alone, right? If we planned ahead, and there are so many resources that we have at our fingertips these days, we'll get through this. And I think when I was pregnant with Josie, like, one of the biggest things to think about was, like, we needed to make sure that we had the right team in place to take over when I went into delivery. And that was actually when, Courtney and Patrick came on board. When I had Josie, they were only 2, 3, 4 months into the job. So, props to them for, coming up to speed and stepping up to be able to take over. But, like, I've always thought that I'd be able to also just bounce right back as well. Because I had other friends who had babies before me, some of whom I visited at the hospital the next day, and they looked fabulous and they were out about and walking and everything was fine. But I think, that's not what we should be planning for in hindsight. My recovery process ended up taking months. There was a complication that resulted in me basically not being able to get out of bed physically for like the first few weeks. And it was really hard. And I didn't feel normal or a remote sense of normal until maybe 4 or 5 months later. And even today, I'm not like physically the normal how I felt prior to having her. So, I mean, there's just a lot of adjusting. And I think we have to think about who are the people in our support network who can help us get through all of that. And with childcare, that could be family, right? That could be making sure that you've interviewed for nannies, if that's something that you're comfortable with. Or I didn't even realize that there's daycare programs for infants as young as 6 weeks. That's kind of insane to me, but that exists as well, So just like doing the research,
just finding what works for you.
Exactly. Doing the research to figure out what options you have available that you're comfortable with. And then there's other resources too, like going back to the whole how scary it was, right? Like there's boot camps that exist. So there's a local company called Boston Naps in the greater Boston area that have these pre-baby boot camps where you go in for a weekend. And they take you through a full day of everything that you can expect. Here are the things as you get closer and closer to your delivery. Here's what happens as you're going to the hospital. Here are some of the things to think about as you go through the delivery process. Here's some of the complications that could occur for you to think about in advance. And then afterwards, here's resources that are available for you. And that was super valuable for me because I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Right. And part of what made it scary was the uncertainty. And that was able to take out some of that uncertainty. And I have good friends who are able to, who loved, the online version of those classes. There was a company called, I think, Tinyhood, that offers something similar like that online. So there's all these resources that are out there as well. And as a dog mom first, before a human mom, then there was the anxiety of, what am I going to do? Right.
Do you feel like Remington kind of got left out a little bit of some stuff now that you have to split your attention?
I mean, absolutely. Remington went with me everywhere. Everywhere. I take pride in knowing that he is probably one of the most well-socialized dogs that exists because he literally went on every mode of transportation and has been everywhere. And since the baby, especially at the outset in the first month or two, I had physical limitations and there was just, the baby required constant attention and time. And it's just physically impossible to be able to devote the same amount of time to him that I did before. But the good news is that doesn't last forever. As your baby grows older, there's fewer and fewer naps. They spend more and more time out and about doing activities. And we can always make sure to carve out that one-on-one time, right, with Remington. So one of my favorite things to do with him as part of my daily routine is Josie goes off to her morning activity, whether that's a play date or a class or something. And then I have my one-on-one time with Remington. We go out for a nice walk, go grab my coffee. And that's our time. And I feel like it's funny because when you hear about people talking about, how to help kids adjust to a second child, it's almost that same process with
give them their own like mommy and me time. They need that.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's definitely been a journey, but in that process too, and we were also introduced to this resource through Boston Naps. There's this, online, resource. I follow their Instagram account called Dog Meets Baby. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
I have not.
But it's all of this information about, it's almost feels like a community in a way of dog moms who have babies and the struggles that we go through and the guilt that we feel, and that it's okay to feel guilty. And here are some of the things to, do or to think about in preparation for bringing a new baby home when you already have a dog at home. And that was super helpful for me as well.
Yeah, I love it. We'll definitely put the link to that in the show notes. And I also want to mention there's another person who's been on the podcast, Michelle, who has Pooch Parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a dog trainer who specializes in bringing dogs home.
Oh, cool.
Or bringing babies home to dog households, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an important part of the
process. Or maybe vice versa too. I don't know. Basically like having kids and dogs together.
Yes.
So that's definitely great. Well, Diana, it's been so great to get to know you. And I think that everyone will appreciate like hearing the real person behind the business. I think that I love meeting everyone on the podcast, and I loved hearing your story. So where can everyone go to learn more about Pet Pocketbook and check out your app?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can head to our website at www.petpocketbook.com. We have our Facebook page as well, also just Pet Pocketbook, as well as Instagram. Our app is currently on an invite-only basis. So if you're interested, just reach out to us through our website, and we'd be happy to hook you up. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for making the time. I know that there's lots of other people demanding your attention, so I appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
What did you like most about this episode? Find me on Instagram at TMystic and let me know what intrigued you or what questions you have about starting or growing your own dog-inspired business. You can also screenshot this episode and tag me in your stories. I love to see who is listening out there. Some of the best conversations happen after the episode, right? So track me down over on Instagram or join the Wear, Wag, Repeat Labs Facebook group to connect with other dog-obsessed entrepreneurs. And as always, you can find all the links and resources discussed in this episode at wearwagrepeat.com/podcast. See you back here next week.